Please be seated. The court is now back in session. Before I hand the floor over to the defense teams, I noticed that Judge Lavange may have some questions to be put to this witness. You may proceed, Judge Lavange.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. It's more a request for clarification in relation to some information that might have been provided before, but maybe I didn't catch it. Witness, you explained to us that regarding the transport of people by train through Battambang, you said that this took place in two steps. A step that followed the fall of Phnom Penh in 1975 and a following step later. And what I would like to know is, do you know what the final destination was of the people who were transported in this way? You spoke about a certain number of stations, but do you know how far these people went? To where? Where did they end up?
Witness, good afternoon, Mr. President. I did not know where the last destination would be. I only knew that people would be let off at various cooperatives.
So what you know is that these people were transported to certain cooperatives, but without exactly knowing which cooperatives these were. Is that what you are telling us?
Yes, that's what I meant. People were transported through cooperatives.
I have a last question for you. You spoke about the transportation of people by railway. And did you see people being transported in other ways? Did you see, for example, people being transported by other means than by train?
No, I did not. Besides that, they were transported by trains.
Thank you, witness. I have no further questions to put to Mr. Sok.
President, thank you, Judge Lavange. The floor is now given to Nuon Chia's defense to put questions to this witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon to all in and around the courtroom, and especially good afternoon to you, Mr. Sok Chin. My name is Jasper Pauw. I am the lawyer for Nuon Chia, the international lawyer for Nuon Chia, and I will be asking you some questions relating to the statements that you provided to the investigating judges and today here in the courtroom. As always, I will be speaking slowly for the benefit of the translators, but if anything is unclear to you, please do ask me for clarification. Mr. Sok Chin, this morning you stated that you do not remember exactly when you were interviewed by the investigators of the OCIJ. Could you perhaps give us an estimate? Can you tell us about how long ago it was that you were questioned by the investigators of the OCIJ? That the witness is looking at his statement, but I'm asking him to answer from memory. So could the witness be instructed to not read from his statement, but to answer the question from memory?
President witness, there is no need for you to refer to that document. If you can recall the time, please say so, and if you cannot recall, please state so as well. Witness, I cannot recall the time.
Could you tell us whether, according to your recollection, this was 1 year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, or 5 years ago? Could you try to be a little bit specific?
When I think back, it could be taken place in either 2008 or 2009.
Thank you. And would you be able to remember the month that this interview took place? And if you don't know, you can state so.
I cannot recall the month.
When the investigators of the OCIJ came to your village, did they explain to you why they wanted to talk to you?
Whatever I said to them is on the written record of the interview.
I understand that, but my question is slightly different. When the investigators came to your village, did they explain to you why they came to talk to you?
I cannot recall what they were speaking back then.
And do you know how the investigators knew that you had been working for the railroads during the regime of Democratic Cambodia?
A group came to me, to my house, and asked me question that when did I start working for the railway. My house was actually located near the railway track as well.
And did they explain to you why they came to your house and not, for example, to the house of perhaps your neighbor? How did they know they could talk to you about the railroads under the democratic regime, under the regime of Democratic Cambodia?
In my village, there are a number of former railway workers, and they came to me. They asked me questions, and they told me that they came from the ECCC.
You stated that there are a number of railroad workers living in your village. Did any of those other railroad workers accompany the investigators when they came to talk to you?
Nobody actually accompanied the group. They came to my house, they conducted an interview with me, and then they interviewed through other people. And I was told that one of them already died. Actually, on that day, 3 of us were interviewed on the same day, and we were all former railway workers.
And can you tell us how you know that on the same day 3 people were interviewed by the investigators of the OCIJ?
I did not know much about that. After I concluded my interview with them, then they interviewed the other 2, but I did not know the substance of the other 2 interviews.
You have testified also this morning about Perung, and you have stated that he was in charge of the technical work. During the DK regime, did you work together with him? Did you work closely together with him?
Yes, I worked with him.
And can you give us an estimate as to how long you worked together with him? Was that throughout the regime of Democratic Cambodia, or was that shorter?
I worked with him during the entire period of Democratic Cambodia.
And you stated a little bit about his role today, but could you tell me a little bit more about what he did during the Democratic Cambodia regime?
He was the chief of the technical section that is specializing in road, bridge, and building. He worked in his own group, but he oversaw the technical aspect of the group. So let me repeat, he specialized in the road, bridge, and building.
Thank you for that answer. And these days, are you still in touch with Perung? Do you still see each other?
I also meet him and see him because He's my neighbor. He doesn't live far from my house, and he is also a retiree.
And are you aware of the fact that Pudung has also given testimony to the investigators of the ECCC?
No, I do not know about that. I do not ask him about that.
And during your interview with the investigators of the OCIJ, was Mr. Pudung present, considering that he lived near you?
He was outside, not within the interview group.
And how did you know he was outside? Did you see him outside, or did people tell you he was outside? Could you explain that, please?
I was interviewed in a room, and there was a window from that room, and from that window I saw him walking outside.
And do you know why he was outside while you were being interviewed?
I was not really sure. Probably he was chit-chatting with the neighbors.
According to the summary of the interview with Mr. Pudung, Mr. Pudung has talked to the investigators off the records. This means that the investigators of the ECCC spoke with Pudung without recording those conversations. And the reference for that, Mr. President, is document number D232/74. English ERN is 00422355. And the Khmer ERN is 00414480. And it can be found under question 60. It is, in fact, the investigator himself who indicates that they have had off-the-record contacts. Mr. Sok Chin, you were interviewed on the same day as Mr. Pudung, and you were interviewed by the same investigator, and it all took place in the same village. Did the investigator of the OCIJ perhaps speak with you as well without recording this conversation, or was the entirety of your interview recorded?
Yes, we talked, but I cannot recall the subject matters that we talked about.
Did the investigator explain to you that he had just spoken to Pudung when he came to ask you questions?
President, Judge Laverne, you may proceed.
Yes, I would like Counsel Pao to explain to us the reasons for such an assertion. He just said that the investigator had spoken with the other witness, I don't remember his name, before he spoke with the witness here present, if I understood correctly what you said. So what is the ground for such an assertion?
Et quelle est sa pertinence?
And what is its relevance?
Thank you, Judge Lavergne, for that question. The source for that knowledge would come from the interviews, the summaries of the interviews themselves. Witness Pdung was interviewed on the 8th of December 2009 at 9:15 a.m. and that interview ended at 2:30 that same day. And 20 minutes later, the interview with this witness starts the 8th of December 2009 at 10 to 3, and that goes on into the afternoon. So that's where I base my knowledge on, that these people were, in fact, interviewed on the same day, and that Pdung was interviewed first. The relevance...
Oui, mais,
Yes, but I apologize, but that's not exactly what you just said, or the assertion that you used to question this witness. So the fact that both witnesses were interviewed the same day is one thing, and that they're interviewed successively is something else. But going beyond that seems a bit harder for me to understand. And once again, I'd like to know what is the relevance of all of these questions.
And to make sure I understand, Judge Lavergne, which assertion did I make, so I can respond comprehensively to your question?
Okay, I do not have the transcript in front of me. It might also be a problem of interpretation, but it seems to me that I understood that you had said to this witness that the investigator said to him that he had interrogated the other witness before he continued with the interview of this witness. Maybe I didn't understand correctly. Maybe you could clarify this for me, please.
Yeah, then I think we understand each other. I did not assert that the investigator had told this witness that he had spoken to the witness in the morning. My question was whether the investigator had told this witness about such an occurrence. And that obviously is relevant if one wants to examine sources of knowledge of this witness. So I did not mean to assert that the investigator had told this witness such a thing.
President, Defense Counsel, you may continue with your questioning of this witness.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm not sure if the witness remembers the question, but I'm happy to repeat it if the witness so indicates.
No, I cannot recall it.
When the investigator of the OCIJ came to interview you, did he explain to you that he had been speaking to Mr. Om Prung earlier that day?
I cannot recall that.
And to avoid confusion, the investigator of the OCIJ stated that he had spoken to Mr. Om Prung off the record, so without recording those parts of the interview. Did the investigator of the OCIJ also speak with you off the record, therefore without recording certain parts of your interview?
I cannot recall what I was asked, but I was later asked to be interviewed by the team. President, thank you, witness. The prosecution, do you have anything to say?
Your Honours, we were going to object, but perhaps the matter is moot now that the witness has answered the question. In our view, there's no proper basis to be reading to this witness information about interview techniques conducted with another witness, during which interview this witness was not present. My learned friend can quite competently and succinctly put a question to this witness as to whether or not he was asked any questions off the record. References to other interviews in this particular context, to our mind, are not appropriate.
Mr. President, under normal circumstances, I would entirely agree with the prosecutor. But in this instance, we are speaking about a set of interviews that was conducted on the same day by the same investigators. These two witnesses are neighbors, and they have worked at the same place during the regime of democratic Cambodia. Apparently, the one witness has been questioned off the record. It's not the defense claiming it, it's the investigator of the OCIJ writing it down himself in the summary of the interview. Therefore, there is reason to at least probe whether or not this witness may have been questioned as well off the record. Again, this is not the defense going off on a fishing expedition. It's the OCIJ itself acknowledging that off-the-record conversations have taken place. So we think it's relevant for establishing and probing the sources of knowledge and credibility of this witness. But of course, we are in your hands.
The President. Now the witness is before you, and he has made it clear that he tried to recall what he has experienced and what he recollects from his experience, and that is the reason for having him to testify before the court today. And the Chamber wishes to remind you that Rule 76.7 is the sub-rule to be taken into account, as for Rule 76.7 provides that unless it is subject to appeal, the closing order may rectify the procedural errors unless there is no any other issue may be raised immediately before the chamber or the Supreme Court chamber. I do not really know your intention, but if I am not mistaken, you have spent considerable time discussing this, and if you refer to Rule 76.7, that can be self-explanatory, and you may move on.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hear you stating that my intentions are not clear. Let me then very briefly explain what my intentions are. I'm not raising any procedural defect. I could not care less about a procedural defect as such. I'm talking about the sources of knowledge of this witness and whether or not his testimony may have been contaminated by either the investigator of the OCIJ or perhaps the other witness. I'm simply doing what every defense lawyer in the world should be doing. It's questioning the sources of knowledge of this witness. But I understand your ruling. We will move on. This morning, Mr. Sok Chin, you mentioned in answering a question by the civil parties that you had found out only recently about the role of Nuon Chea during the regime of democratic Cambodia. Could you tell us how you found out about this role? Did you read about this, or did you talk to people? How did you find out about the role of Nuon Chea?
I learned about his role only when I watched the TV broadcast once in a while, and when he was the chairman of the People's Assembly, I did not know his role.
And when you speak about the TV broadcasts, which TV broadcasts are you referring to?
I am referring to the broadcasts on the video on the TV station, the CTN TV station of their live feeding of the proceeding at the extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia.
And when you watch those TV programs, do you discuss these with members of your family or friends?
No, I did not. I only watch it for myself.
And since 1979, have you discussed with members of your family events that took place during the regime of democratic Cambodia?
No, I have never attempted to recall it. I have never discussed it either with my family members or with my friends.
And if we are moving to your work that you undertook at the railroads during the regime of democratic Cambodia, you have stated that you were responsible for 21 kilometers of the railway. Did that mean that you had to go out every day to check and repair those tracks?
Yes, that's correct. I had to do that on a daily basis.
And is it correct to state that you were living in Trepeang Chong?
Yes, that is correct. In Songkat Trepeang Chong, Pusat Province.
And can you explain to us how far Trepeang Chong was from that stretch of 21 kilometers that you were repairing and checking?
The 26-kilometer stretch was within Posat province, and it started from Klang Mueang road all the way to the railway near Bang Khna location.
And how would you get to your work in the morning? Was the railroad next to your commune, or did you have to go there by car or walk or some other way?
As for the technical work relating to the railway, in my Songkat or commune, we had lorry. Lorry was used to transport workers and staff members, and this lorry carries a few people, and we had to push it along in order to move us along this railroad. So at that time we call this tool as lorry to carry people, and it has 4 wheels, and we put the wood on it, and then we have to push it. That was the typical means of transport for the staff working in my location at that time.
And would you be working every day, or did you have days that you could stay in Trepeang Chong?
No, we did not have the time to take off, except when we were really sick. But we rarely said that we were sick, because otherwise we would have been accused of being consciously ill or so. So we had to work even if we were sick.
And how often would you go to Leech?
Along the railroad, there was a crossroad leading to Liege, but I had never been to Liege, and I never knew it. But people would put a stop over there in order to connect it to Liege.
Just to make sure I understand you correctly, let me ask the question once more in a slightly different form. During the regime of democratic Cambodia, how often would you go to Liege? Would it be, well, let me ask a question like this.
During the democratic Cambodia period, I never visited Liege.
You were also asked this morning the following question, and I'm paraphrasing because I do not have the transcript. The question was, did Tamum or Tamik give you any instructions about trains coming through and carrying people? And your answer was, no, he did not. He did not know about this he did not know about this because I saw this situation, what happened only along the railway tracks. Could you explain to us what did you mean by stating that you saw the situation only along the railway tracks?
ខ្ញុំមាននាទី
My role was to repair the railroad, and as for the goods or items transported, I did not know who those items belonged to. I only knew that there were items and people who were being carried by the railroad. And along that railroad, there was one crossroad connecting to Liège.
You just now speak about items that were being carried by the railroad. Could you tell us which items were carried by the railroad?
As for the goods or items carried by the train, as you may be aware, that there were different wagons for different purposes. Certain wagons of the train were reserved for carrying goods, and others were meant to carry people. But at that time, I did not see goods. Those wagons which were used to carry goods were then used to carry people.
Maybe I did not understand your earlier question just now, your earlier answer just now then. I thought that you indicated that these trains carried items as well as people. Is that a fair rendering of your answer earlier?
When I mentioned goods earlier on, I wanted to emphasize that there were certain wagons used to carry goods in the past, but at that time there were no wagons used to carry any items or goods. During the Democratic Cambodia, they made use of those wagons to carry passengers.
And you have stated earlier that the wagons that were used for transporting people were the type of wagons that were usually used for transporting goods. Can you describe for us what these wagons looked like? For example, did these wagons have windows to look out through for the people, or were they entirely closed, as is often the case with transportation wagons?
those wagons look like a small cubic room with about 4 meter width and about 16 meter long, and there were only 4 gateways.
And did these wagons have windows?
The wagons did not have windows.
And you said that there were 4 gateways. Could you explain to us what you mean with gateways?
They were the doors, actually, and when people were asked to get on the train, they had to go through the doors. In the past, those wagons were reserved for items transport, and then they would put the items or goods through these doors. But during the Democratic Cambodia, people were asked to get on the train through those doors.
And after the people got on the train, were those doors closed or did they remain open?
No, the door remained open, and people who were standing nearby the doors were asked to move a little bit away from the door, but of course the door remained open.
So there would be enough air entering the train during the trip. Is that your assessment?
The President, witness, please hold on. Mr. Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Your Honours, my friend is asking a question that, based on the evidence elicited thus far, would be asking the witness to speculate. Unless the witness has been on one of these wagons with 40 to 50 people, or unless he's an expert in how air is calculated in terms of cubic meters, etc., then the question is completely out of place.
Mr. President, I did not hear the prosecutor object when the civil parties asked about exposure to sunlight, and I think the witness, if he has seen the trains, he would well be able to answer the question as to whether or not there was enough air, enough ventilation in those trains.
The President, the objection and the grounds of objection by the prosecution is sustainable. Rather, a witness need not answer this question.
Mr. Witness, when you saw those trains passing by, in your assessment, did there seem to be enough ventilation for the passengers aboard that train?
There was enough ventilation and
you have stated that you were living in Sangkat Tapeng Chorng. Did you sleep in this commune every night after you were transferred there?
In Sangkat Trapang Chong, they built houses for us to stay. So we stayed there. We stayed there 24 hours around the clock.
Thank you. And after you were done with checking on the rails and repairing the rails, you would be transported back to your commune. Is that correct?
No, that was not the case. At that time, nobody transported us back to our hometown. We had to get on the trail by ourselves, and then we have to push it using the stick in order to push us forward using the rail.
And can you give us an estimate as to how long it would take you to get home to your commune?
It varied. Over the 26 stretch, there were certain portion of the rail that were derailed, and we had to repair, and we had to stay for a long period of time in order to get it repaired. But in other places, there were only minor deterioration of the rail, so it took us a short period of time to repair. And as for the travel times, we also varied from day to day depending on our strengths. Once we were energetic, we could push it forward faster than the other day.
And I'm sure it is. I'm sure you have explained this already, but just for me to understand, the commune that you were living in, was that along the railroad track?
The commune where I lived was close to the railroad track. It was the houses that were built for us were about only 10 meters away from the rail track, and there were dining halls and the work site near the railroad as well.
Thank you. That makes things a lot clearer. I would now like to ask you some questions as to the role of Tammaum. You have stated this morning that management was under Tammaum, and he could decide whatever he wished to. How do you know that Tammaum could decide whatever he wished to?
I did not know how the decision was made, but on a day-to-day work, we had to do as what he asked us to do on a daily basis. But as to how the decision was made or how the direction was made, I did not know. But we had to do what he asked us to do. Otherwise, we would be accused of not respecting the party's policy or Angkar's policy.
So, is it fair to say that you experienced him as he was making the decisions involving your life and work during the regime of Democratic Cambodia?
បាទត្រឹមត្រូវ
Yes, that is correct.
And you have also stated that Mom reported to the train unit in Phnom Penh. And could you explain to us how you know that Mom responded or reported to the train unit in Phnom Penh? Did you ever witness him reporting to the train unit in Phnom Penh, for example?
ខ្ញុំបានឃើញ
I saw him go to Phnom Penh on a special train, and upon his return, he would convene the meeting. And in that meeting, normally he set forth the direction of work for our colleagues.
And you have also stated that trains passing through were under the command of the train units in Phnom Penh. How do you know that those trains were under the command of the train unit in Phnom Penh?
បាទត្រឹមត្រូវព្រោះ
That is correct, because no one would have the power to order it, because we were at the subnational level. Nobody at the subnational level would be able to set the direction or order for the train to go to any direction to pick up the people. So there could have been no one else but people from Phnom Penh who set out such order.
And did you ever see any of those orders? Did you see any written documents coming from Phnom Penh relating to the movements of trains?
បាទខ្ញុំអត់បានដឹង
That I do not know, and I never saw any written documents.
And you have also stated that the train stations were under the authority of the train unit in Phnom Penh. The same question, did you ever see any documents coming from Phnom Penh that would suggest that the train unit in Phnom Penh was in power over these train stations?
During the regime, all the work was similar to that what we did in the previous regime, unless there was an order issued by the Phnom Penh authority, then the work would be done or conducted. The order or the structure was similar to that existed in the previous regime.
And how would you receive your orders? Would they always be issued by Tamam himself, or was there someone under Tamam that issued orders for you?
As for the work I did along the 21-kilometer railway track, everything was done according to the instruction of Tamom.
And you say everything was done according to the instructions of Tamum, but just to be clear, does that mean that Tamum himself gave you the order personally, or was there perhaps someone under Tamum that conveyed his orders to you?
There was nobody below Tamum who would issue orders to us. It was Tamum himself who gave orders.
And can you tell us how many staff members Tamum had under him? Can you give us an estimate?
I couldn't recall the number of staff members under the control of Tamum. I can recall that within my group there were 18 members.
That is a clear answer. Mr. President, I am almost done with my questions, but I would seek your leave to have the possibility to confer for a short period with my national co-counsel, Mr. Sonaroon, to ask him to clarify something for me which I simply do not know, not being a Cambodian national. And I see that time would be appropriate for a break. So with your leave, I would ask you to break now, and then when we return, I will have at most 5 minutes left of questioning, if any. So it is, I'm in your hands, obviously.
President, thank you. We'd like to check with you whether you have consulted with the other two defense teams regarding time allocation, because for this witness, or the three defense teams are allocated one afternoon session only to question this witness.
You are entirely right, Mr. President. I must say I've been too enthusiastic and I have not checked with my colleagues, but I am sure that they themselves can indicate if I would have leave to proceed for 5 minutes, and I see nodding, so 5 minutes at most after the break, if any.
Thank you. Angodom, you may proceed. Angodom. Good afternoon, Mr. President, Your Honors, everyone in and around the courtroom. The Nunchi's defense team may have more time to put question to this witness, as our team does not have any question to be put to this witness. Thank you, Mr. President. Counsel for Kiew Sampond. Mr. President, my team also does not have questions for this witness, so Nunchi's defense may use our time. President, thank you for the information. The time is appropriate for a break. We shall take a break and resume at 3 p.m. Court officer, could you assist the witness during the break and have him returned at 3 p.m.
Some culture.